I'm so triggered by the food stamp government shutdown. Why am I so passionate about the subject of people and food stamps? What does it all mean? Today I'm going to come out and share with you my story, and it's not what you think, because I've never been on food stamps my whole entire life, but there was a time in my life where I should have been on. There's a part of my life that I have shared over the years, but maybe not quite as outspoken as I am today. Why did all of this trigger me so much? Well, let me tell you what. I have a lot of empathy for people who are struggling, and my empathy comes from a totally different background. I didn't grow up what you would consider lower class or poor. In fact, I grew up the opposite direction. But hard times hit us, very hard, and we found ourselves in a situation that we never dreamed we would be in. And when I started getting the comments of people saying, get a job, or doing this, or doing that, it triggered me in a way that I never thought it would. And I want to share with you a little bit my story today. About 20 years ago, things hit us really hard. Before that, we lived a very good, secure life. We didn't have to worry about money, didn't have to worry about anything. And our life took a different road, so you want to call it. We had a road that was going this way, and all of a sudden we went this way. At that time, I didn't know about how to get food stamps. I didn't know. I was embarrassed. I didn't know what to do. I didn't know how to go about doing that. We didn't even have a computer. I didn't know anything like that. And what we decided to do is, and if you go back to my video archives, to all of the new faces here, thank you so much for stopping in and being part of our community. I have videos where I go into deep detail about our life. But all of a sudden, we were thrown into a different world, a world that we were not used to. At least I was not used to. And I will say this and make statements. These are my opinions. These are my thoughts. This is my history of life. You may agree with me, you may not, but it's part of my story. When we sold everything that had any value to us, life became very different. But yet the circle of people stayed the same. We moved into a mobile home that we are in today. My husband sold his classic truck of his dreams in order to get ourselves out of debt. There was a time in our lives where we were financially in extreme hardships. But yet we were around people who I would call the elite. I looked in the Webster dictionary, what is the term elite and what does that mean? Well, elite means somebody who is financially very wealthy or in higher standards, status quo. And that is the people I was around. And they had no empathy whatsoever. One of the hardest things I remember was sitting in a circle of people, and we had moved into our mobile home, and our life was very different. When we moved into this mobile home, the roof leaked. It was a foreclosure. This mobile home was not lived in for over a year. It was very bad shape. In fact, it probably maybe shouldn't have been sold as is. It was in bad shape. Up until a year ago, we had no fully working plumbing. If you go back to my video archives, you will see me doing a lot of things that were very interesting for an American. But we'll get into that subject in just a moment. We moved into this property. This is all we had left. And we paid cash for it. And we built our dream here. 14 years later, our property looks very different. Because every time I made a little bit of money on YouTube, I squirreled it away to help to build up our place. But I was sitting around a group of people. So what they would say is, while I'm sitting there living in a mobile home, mind you, they would say and talk disgracefully about mobile homes. One time, one of their children said to them, "I can't believe, Mom and Dad, you ever lived in a mobile home." Yes, we did for a very short time, but thankfully we won't have to die in one. And there I sat, sold everything that I owned. It wasn't our fault. It was the economy and things that happened beyond our control. And there I sat with my hands folded in my lap, and I never spoke a word. I remember being discriminated against for living in a mobile home. In fact, I was discriminated for years on YouTube for living in a mobile home. Oh, look at that Homestead Tessie. She lives in a tin can shack. Well, her house should be condemned. She doesn't deserve to live in a place like that. Let's condemn that house. You wouldn't believe what I went through. So when people say and talk about other people on food stamps, my blood boils thicker than molasses. So you see, my friends, I have a different perspective on a lot of things because I've been around people who were what I would consider the posh people, and I understood the way they do things. I'm not saying that all people like that have no empathy, but the elites just really don't have the empathy because they never knew what life was like when it was hard. I would never want to live that life. In fact, I'm very thankful to this day that I had to go through all the hardships that I did. In doing so, I have a heart for people. I don't know what you would want to consider us. I would say the little people. What we could do, though, is we can share kindness with one another and have empathy. And as the world goes, and as we become more and more of a digital society, which I have a video coming out about that, it's very important that we stand together and we help one another out. I am of the nature that I am not a fighter. You know, there are people out there that are fighters. They have their cause and they're willing to fight for their cause. And for me, I think my purpose is to share a lot of encouragement to people and to just be there for people as a listening ear. I've heard hundreds, literally hundreds of stories that people are sharing about the food stamps. And to be honest with you, I am so overwhelmed with thanksgiving and happiness because I didn't get a whole lot of negativity. In fact, a lot of people were thinking the same thing. And one thing that I am amazed is this. Those videos reached thousands of people beyond the United States of America. And what I realized is no matter where we live, we have a common same thoughts. It just amazes me. As human beings, I think a lot like somebody in the UK and people in Brazil and people in other countries. And it's not a United States thing. It's a world thing. And it's a world crisis. Because what's happening is, what people are saying is this: the space between the elites, the high income and the low income, there is no middle class income anymore as much. And what's happening is they're getting richer, we're getting poor. We're getting poor, they're getting richer. And they are living off of the backs of all of us. And I will say that, you know, having empathy gives a lot of courage, because having empathy means that you feel for the other person. I could tell you hundreds of stories in my lifetime of how we were given no empathy and just how we were belittled and mocked and made fun of because we didn't have the look of materialistic things anymore. They just didn't care. Absolutely didn't care. In fact, it wasn't that they didn't care. It was almost like they were putting salt on a wound. When my husband sold his truck that he just loved, we had a little old car. We would drive to different places among people. They would say, "Oh, where's the truck? Didn't you want it anymore?" Never had any empathy. Never even had any thought that maybe, just maybe, my husband sold it to keep us fed, to keep the electric on. When my husband went through a big health scare, you know, he did what he could do. And that was, he sold his prized possession in the worldly terms, so we could live 5 years off of that. Empathy doesn't mean a handout. Empathy, all empathy means is a kind word and a kind prayer and just, "Hey, how are you doing today?" I've longed for years for that email to come to me. "Hey, how are you doing today?" Instead of the emails like, "Why didn't you do this? Why did you do that?" Just a kind email. "How are you doing today?" From the people that were the closest to me. Never had that. Never had an email. "Hey, just thinking about you today. Just wanted to see how you're doing." Never. In all those years, not a one. So when you talk about the elites, it's not that I'm against people that have a high income or that I'm against people that have money. I'm against of what that stands for in a lot of people's lives. There are a few gems out there that are, their whole lives are about giving and helping one another. But in the government, I would say that the majority of the elites maybe aren't quite like that, simply because they have no clue. They simply have no clue. So I will never lump everyone together because I know what that feels like. I will never label everyone. Yes, there's always a few rotten apples in every bunch. And like I told you, there's still a good basket of apples, even in that basket. So I would never lump everyone in that way. But I look back and see all of these wealthy TV evangelists who made a living. And not just a living. They absolutely lived in luxury over the promises of things that they told people. You see, I was under that teaching growing up, the prosperity teaching, that you will get all of this and all of those things. And well, I'm not going to go down a tangent hole because that's another thing I'm passionate about, because blessed are the poor in spirit, for they shall be comforted. And blessed are the meek, for they shall inherit the earth. And so I think that when this whole food stamp thing came out, and I just shared my thoughts with people, I just really, it triggered me in a way, because I know what it was like to live a certain way and to get rid of all of that and continue to live this way. And so I had a foot here and a foot here, and I had a perspective on things. And when people are so judgy and judgmental towards others, it hit a nerve with me. Hit a nerve. And I'm not one to speak out a whole lot, but I understand, see, society is made up of a lot of people. It's not just people that their whole lives maybe were low income. It hit people that maybe made mistakes in their lives and they're paying for their mistakes. We made mistakes in our lives. You can go back and watch some of my financial videos. There were some major mistakes made. It was a mistake, but nevertheless, it was a mistake. Nobody's perfect, you know? You know, people do things. They are naive. They don't understand that the consequences. They think they're doing the right thing and they're not. And so when you cannot judge people on food stamps, you cannot judge people because you don't know the shoes they were in. And I always say, and I will always say, he who is without sin, you cast the first stone. So thank you guys so much for listening about the food stamp videos and a little bit about my life. There's a lot of new eyes on some of these videos and maybe they didn't know about me, and I wanted to share a little more about me. There's a lot. I'm a complex person, my history, and I'm made up of a lot of things like all of us, right? But through it all, I'm very thankful. I'm very happy. Yes, I'm very happy. I would never want to be the people of my past, ever. I'm very happy because I learned to have empathy towards others, and I learned what it's like to know who really cares in your life, and to know that above all, I will say this, the Lord has been by my side, and if it wasn't for him, I don't know where I'd be. Take care, everyone. We'll see you guys in the next one. Whew, that was a mouthful again. Bye, everybody.